Herbal Primer by Greenfire Herbs. This is Lesson 2, Are Herbs Safe? It's a simple question, just 3 words. But what are we really asking? Are we asking about every herb in every situation? Unlikely. There isn't much in this world that is always safe in every situation. So the question isn't so simple. There are several questions implied by those 3 words, and to answer them, we'll have to examine some assumptions. Too many times when discussing the safety of natural ingredients, or natural versus man-made ingredients, someone feels the need to point out that poisonous plants are found in nature. Well, of course, and if you asked people, probably everyone would be able to name at least one poisonous plant. Yet when it comes to herbs, there seems to be an underlying assumption that they're just safe. Maybe it's because we're used to using herbs in cooking. Or it may be because herbs aren't created in a complex lab, they just grow. More than that, they can be grown in our own gardens. Of course we grow poisonous plants too. Every year local papers, news stories, and Facebook posts contain lists of common plants to keep pets and children away from. But these are decorative plants. Surely the plants we grow for healing and for teas must be safe. But why would we assume that? Do we think that a plant would only be called an herb if it was safe? Maybe it's because herbs are often sold as supplements, or that we don't need prescriptions to use them. Herbs are sometimes treated as a little medicine we're allowed to play with, while the doctors handle the big medicine. Anything you use that can have an impact on your health can have an impact on your health. That seems pretty obvious, yet we commonly take an herbal supplement for this, or drink an herbal tea for that, based on a magazine article, or something we saw on TV, or a friend's advice, without fully understanding what it is we're taking, or what it can do. It's important to understand that herbs are not little medicine. They're serious healthcare. Traditional Chinese medicine is an herbal healing system that's been in use for over 5,000 years. The oldest healing system, Ayurveda, is over 6,000 years old. Both are still being used successfully today. Much of today's conventional medicine is based on herbs. Knowing how to use herbs safely is as important as understanding any medicines you may be taking. As we discussed briefly in Lesson 1, what is an herb? Herbs are composed of literally thousands of chemical constituents, most of which we can't even identify yet. So how do we evaluate herbal safety if we don't even understand what herbs are made of? Well, 2 cornerstones of the scientific method are observation and empirical evidence. We know that people have used herbs for a very long time. Recently discovered, the earliest known use of herbs is a 77,000-year-old archaeological find of bedding made from insect-repellent herbs. But we also know that for at least the last 6,000 of those years, people have been paying very close attention to what herbs can do and how to use them safely. Many of the chemicals in herbs are associated with specific properties of the herbs. An herb's color and taste, properties such as astringency, whether an herb is warming or cooling, these are all determined by the chemical composition of the herb. It is these properties, called energetics, that have helped herbalists build systems of healing. It wasn't necessary to name or identify the chemicals that determine the herb's properties, or to know how those chemicals worked in the body. It was enough to observe that herbs with specific properties consistently had certain healing properties. This is very simplified, of course. We'll discuss energetics and the world's main herbal systems in future lessons, and herbalism in general in Lesson 3. It's important to remember that we've just begun looking at the chemical composition of herbs. We only understand some of the hundreds of chemicals that we've identified out of the thousands of chemicals that are found in herbs. This is an exciting time. We're finally getting a glimpse into how herbs work, but it's still only a glimpse. Herbs, like all living things, are chemical factories. The thousands of chemicals they produce and are made of handle everything from photosynthesis to protection from disease and insect damage, reproduction, season changes, and literally every aspect of an herb's life. These chemicals work together synergistically. Chemicals impact each other in significant ways. A chemical can enhance, reduce, or just change the effect of another chemical. Put thousands of these together and you have an incredibly complex system. The whole is literally more than the sum of its parts. You can't understand herbs by breaking them apart. Studying an herb's chemicals one at a time is a start, but until you look at the chemical's behavior in context with the other chemicals in the herb, you really don't know much. So we need to be careful about the conclusions we reach based on the study of the few chemicals we understand. This has implications for the many research studies that are being done today on herbal safety. Herbs that have been used effectively and safely for hundreds, even thousands of years, have been determined to be dangerous and in some cases banned because one chemical found in the herb was found to cause a problem in mice or rats. We can question whether we gain any useful information from feeding large and/or concentrated amounts of anything to rodents. But more important, what does studying a chemical in isolation tell us about how it works alongside the thousands of other chemicals in the herb, or about the safety or the properties of the herb itself? What we don't know far outweighs what we do know. These studies do raise interesting questions and should lead to further research, especially in how specific chemicals function in the whole herb, but they are still too limited to contradict what we know from long historical use. Studies in herbal chemistry have also had an impact on the supplement industry. For many herbs, we have identified one, two, or a few chemicals that come to be seen as responsible for the herb's healing properties. Today you can find aisles of supplements of herbs standardized to contain a specific amount of a given chemical, a specific chemical that has been isolated and concentrated, or a blend of two or more such chemicals. To be fair, we do understand how some of these chemicals work on their own, and taking them as supplements can be beneficial. But it's a mistake to expect them to replace the whole herb, or to work the way the whole herb does. Nor should we assume that an herbal supplement standardized in a specific constituent will work better than the herb itself. There are unfortunately a couple of other problems with herbal supplements. Too often the packaging doesn't contain enough information on how to use the supplement safely. Adequate information would include possible drug interactions, health conditions that would preclude using the supplement, and possible side effects. For example, ginseng should be avoided by people on MAO inhibitors. Echinacea should be avoided by people with immune disorders. Kava kava should be avoided by people with liver disease or liver impairment. In high doses, aloe can cause intestinal cramps. High doses of black cohosh can cause headache or nausea. And you don't want to go out in the sun after applying anything topically that contains citrus, as citrus can cause photosensitivity. Packaging depends on the manufacturer. I've seen packaging with plenty of information, and I've seen packaging that was dangerous in what it didn't contain. Another problem is herbs being marketed inappropriately. Ephedra is a prime example. Ephedra is a perfectly good herb, traditionally used in China for asthma, colds with chills, and night sweats. It's a serious herb that should not be taken without professional guidance. It contains the alkaline salt ephedrine, which is what the pharmaceutical version is based on. Where someone got the idea of marketing it as a weight loss herb in amounts that exceed any recommended doses is beyond understanding. It's no surprise that people were hurt by its use in this way, but the problem isn't with the herb, it's with the companies that marketed it so irresponsibly. Supplements have a valid place in healthcare. I'm not trying to suggest that you shouldn't consider using them, but no discussion on herbal safety would be complete without making it clear that you have to do your homework with supplements just as you need to do with the herbs themselves. Don't assume the packaging tells you all you need to know or even that it's accurate. And be sure to tell your doctor about any supplements you're taking. Herbal safety isn't one size fits all. There are herbs that are considered to be very safe. There are also herbs that are poisonous, but that can be very useful in the hands of a very experienced practitioner. And there are herbs that fall at every point in between. In Lesson 1 we spoke briefly about adaptogens. These are very safe, food-like herbs. They are so beneficial and so safe to use that in many countries, people typically take an ounce or two every day of their lives. We'll talk about adaptogens in their own lesson. The point here is that some herbs are just considered safe. For other herbs, doses matter. For example, culinary herbs are medicinal herbs and are often used in food for a reason. Basil is frequently paired with tomatoes because it helps deal with the acid in the tomato. Anise is found in many desserts because it helps with digestion. But the thyme you add to your tomato sauce won't help you much with a cold. Thyme tea, on the other hand, with lemon and honey, often can. The lemon and the honey, by the way, aren't just for taste, the three work together. Steep covered for at least 20 minutes. But if you're pregnant, you want to use other herbs that are safe to use during pregnancy for your cold. You should avoid thyme in medicinal doses, though it's safe to use in culinary amounts. In general, you want to stay with the safer herbs as much as you can. These herbs tend to help your body heal, or in smaller doses help to maintain good health. but there are times when you'll need to use something stronger. Stronger herbs tend to be more specific in their uses. Depending on how strong the herbs are, you may want to limit how long you take them, and be more careful with doses. As you move along the scale of herb strength, there is a point where you want to consult with an experienced practitioner before taking the herb. We mentioned that ephedra is one of these. Many herbs can be used internally. These can be taken in or as food, in teas, as tinctures, in capsules, or as supplements. Some of these have external uses as well. Other herbs are for external use only. Herbs can be used externally in many ways, including salves, ointments, liniments, massages, poultices, compresses, soaks, and the list goes on. Different parts of the plant can have different properties. This is important because in some plants, only specific parts are used. In others, the whole plant may be used. Some parts of the plant can be stronger than others. And in many cases, different parts of the plant have different properties and are used in different ways. While the whole dandelion plant can be used, the leaves are more of a tonic, while the roots are better for detoxing. The whole echinacea plant is used, and all the parts work in pretty much the same way. We only use the ginseng root and the chamomile flower, but we can use the entire above-ground part of the yarrow. Often, there are many species of the same herb. The different species may all have similar properties, but that's not always the case. Some species may be stronger than others, or may have different properties. Some species, especially those hybridized for landscaping, may not have much medicinal value at all. Herb species can be identified by their Latin names. For example, there are many species of mint. I like growing a variety of mints, including chocolate mint, ginger mint, orange mint, lemon mint, peppermint, and spearmint. I like a variety of mint teas for the different flavors, but if I wanted to use mint medicinally, I would use either peppermint, mentha piperita, or spearmint, mentha spicata, depending on what I wanted the mint for. I'm not too particular where I buy most of my mint plants or seeds, but I am careful about where I get my peppermint and spearmint. I get these from sources that give me the Latin names and that I trust. Hawthorn berries are a good herb for the heart. We know very little about the medicinal value of hawthorn sold for landscaping. Even among wild-growing herbs, different species may have different properties. You want to be sure when you buy your herbs that you get the herb you expect to. Always check the Latin name. Many people today want to grow their own herbs. I'm one of them. But herbs evolve to grow under certain environmental conditions, and their medicinal value may depend on how the herb is grown. So unless you can exactly replicate the native growing conditions of the plant, or you're growing an herb that is native to your area, the medicinal value of your herbs may not be what you expect. This doesn't mean you shouldn't grow your own herbs, but it is something to keep in mind. We've talked a lot about the herbs themselves and the different ways they can be used. We also need to talk about the people who use herbs. Just like with food and conventional medicines, there is always the possibility that you may be allergic to an herb you're using for the first time. You might think you can guess at which herbs you might be allergic to. You may want to avoid something like goldenrod if you have hay fever. However, being allergic to pollen doesn't mean you'll be allergic to the plant, and goldenrod contains an antihistamine. You may find that goldenrod reduces your allergy symptoms, and is just the herb you need. Everyone is unique. We don't all react to the same things in the same way. The same is true for herbs as it is for conventional medicine. There are many herbs that are recommended for headaches, for example. The herb you decide to try may not work for you. It may even make you feel worse. It isn't likely, but it can and does happen. The solution is to try a different herb. There are a number of herbal sources available to you. You can harvest herbs growing wild, grow your own, buy fresh or dried herb from suppliers, buy pre-packaged or bulk teas, or buy supplements. Before considering harvesting herbs you didn't grow yourself, be very sure you know what the herb is. Wild crafting is beyond the scope of this primer, except to point out that it can be difficult to tell some herb species apart. Many herbs are endangered, and some poisonous plants can look very much like some medicinal herbs. You can find some very nice herbal blends in pre-packaged or bulk teas. Make sure you know what's in the teas, that there aren't any herbs you're allergic to or have adverse reactions to or that interfere with any medications you're taking. Tea bags rarely contain enough herb to count as a medicinal dose, but you can always use more than one, and if the tea makes you feel better, that's what counts. If you're really interested in using herbs, you should look for a good herbal supplier. The best suppliers offer herbs that are ethically sourced, harvested at the right time, dried appropriately to maintain their healing properties, and that are not stored for long periods of time. The supplier should provide information about the herb, including its Latin name. It's often helpful to know where herbs are grown. It may be important to you to know if your herbs are grown organically, chemically free, or were wildcrafted. Basic information on how the herb is used is also helpful. You can use this to select the herbs you want to know more about. One source I highly recommend is Mountain Rose Herbs. Their link and links to other trusted suppliers appear below. I mentioned that a reasonable supplier will sell ethically sourced herbs. Too many herbs have been over-harvested and are on the endangered list. Whether wild harvesting on your own or buying from a supplier, you want to avoid depleting at-risk or endangered populations. United Plant Savers is a great place to go to learn more about endangered or at-risk herbs. I've included their link below as well. I keep mentioning that you need to do your own research, but that means knowing whose information you can trust. LearningHerbs.com and their sister site HerbMentor.com are two sites I highly recommend. Membership in LearningHerbs.com is free, while HerbMentor.com isn't. Other reputable sources are also listed below. The best thing about herbs is that they can help you be more in control of your own health care. But that means you need to be more responsible as well. Do your research. Know what herbs you're taking, why you're taking them, how you should take them, and in what dose. Make sure the herbs you use don't interfere with any medications you take and that your doctor knows about them. If the herbs aren't for maintenance, know what effects to expect and when to expect them. If the herbs aren't working, or if you don't like how they make you feel, stop using them and try something else. When taking an herb for the first time, be cautious. Use only a little and see how it makes you feel. So the simple answer to our simple question is yes. The not so simple answer is yes, we know and understand herbs. We know how to use them safely and effectively. But the key is knowing. That's your responsibility. So please join us next week for Lesson 3, Herbalism.